Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric, this vegan show where I talk about where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. There I go, screwing up already. For today's episode, I'm gonna talk about the latest episode of Bull. So in this episode, we had a pilot named Taylor Mathens, who's basically the lone survivor of a plane crash where like 62 people died, including her co-pilot. And basically, she's being blamed for it. It's like, oh, it was pilot error. Miss Matheson, played by Tristy Kelly Dunn. I get giddy every time I see her because anytime I see her, I just automatically think of, Siobhan, who she played on Banshee, as well as Allie on Blind Spot, especially because she was on last week's episode, so it just kind of pressured my mind. I was like, Tristy Kelly Dunn. I just get like that every time, but like more so than anything, her portrayal of Siobhan from Banshee is what always kind of sticks out to me every time I think about her. But nonetheless, a lot of interesting things in this episode. Well, for one, we ended up finding out, well, a little bit about Bull. Find out that he is actually a pilot, that basically airlines kind of call upon his service from time to time. They really had to decide whose side, they had to get the story first, the truth first, before they decide like which side they were going to take, whether they were going to take the pilot side or they were going to take the airline side and everything. And I really like the message of this episode. Basically, like, even without trying to, there is a subconscious level, and not just men, but women too, that just kind of automatically kind of base their opinions on gender. Like, for instance, they do the whole like side by side where it's like Taylor and her lawyer walk up, and Marissa was almost kind of going to say like hi to the pilot, like talking to the lawyer because she thought that was him, but Bull interrupted her and was just like, Taylor, nice to meet you. It's kind of cut her off because it was just kind of like, you just, because you in a situation like that, you just automatically assume that the pilot was male, because I mean, they even brought up the statistic in the episode, just like only like 4% of pilots are females, so that's kind of interesting. And that in itself, it seems like it shouldn't matter, but it does play a part in this episode, because basically they're trying to weed out the jury, specifically for people who would kind of like not be biased towards a female, as well as not, even if they do have that bias, to be able to separate it, to be able to look past it. Like, because like I say, it's not an out front bias. It's more like just in their brain, it's just kind of like, it's like, oh, she's a woman type of thing. Like subconsciously, it's there in the back of their mind. And at first had to weed that out, and basically, because even her lawyer like was kind of a bit of a douchebag, because he had basically Cable was doing her job, and he was like, okay, excuse me, can you get some coffee? And it's like, wait, what? Why you just automatically assume she's like the assistant or something? And it's like, even when Marissa was talking to him and explaining everything, it's almost, you can obviously tell that he was kind of ignoring them, adding like a douchebag. I did like the fact is that like Marissa was like, okay, did you spit in his coffee cup? Because she was about to pick it up and she's about to drink it. She's like, but I wouldn't drink that. So it's like, I made me wonder, what did she put in it? You knew she was going to put something in it. I mean, you can't argue with him being a douchebag. I mean, it really felt bad for Taylor, because it was one of those situations where everyone was basically saying it's her fault. Obviously, she panicked and something went wrong. Which, on my side of things, just kind of me interjecting my own thoughts. Like, would that really be so bad if she did panic? I get it. She's supposed to be a professional, and you're supposed to not, panic. That's the whole point of you being trained for the job. It's to not panic. But at the same time, it's like human nature to panic. I get it. Like, with the situation, it's a grave situation where it's like a lot of people died. She was the only one that survived it. But it's still that situation of like, there's still the side of like, I know if I interject myself in that situation, would I be able to separate it like that? No, I'd be like, I full on blame her if I was one of the family members of someone that died. It's like, oh, it's 100% her fault. I wouldn't look at it as like, no, it was a condition with the weather and stuff like that. It's just like, to me, I would just instantly, because in a situation like that, you need someone to blame, because that's all you have. But like I said, it's just like, to me, it's one of those situations. It's like, like I said, this is just how I feel about it from an outside perspective. Like I said, if I was in that situation, I'd probably think differently. But from this perspective, I was like, you can't really blame her for an error. Like, humans make mistakes. They're not perfect. But like I said, it's her job not to be affected by, to do her job to the fullest without kind of losing her cool. She's supposed to stay cool, calm, and collected. That's the whole point of being training. Plus, the fact is, she has military training too. So I feel like, on top of that all, it's like she's a woman too. So, I mean, it seems like there could be give and take with it. It's like, less can be expected from her because she's a woman, or more can be suspected of her from because she's a woman, type of situation. And you even had the dude, the mechanic, who basically, like, oh, me and my team, we would look through everything before the plane took off, and then the co-pilot came, and she kind of did her own check, and it was like, oh, but the co-pilot was a male, and he was like, oh, crap, because he automatically assumed, like, she was the co-pilot. She basically took over for her co-pilot. Because she even had, because her and her co-pilot were pretty close, not in the sense that his wife was thinking. Like, you would always look at the way the wife, she was looking at Taylor, like, almost with resentment, that, she blamed him. She even says it later on in the episode because she assumed that Taylor, like, she knew her husband was having an affair, that, like, they were trying to fix a relationship, but she just automatically assumed, just because she's the woman he's around the most, which is not like there's not female flight attendants at all, but I guess she needed someone to blame. It was already on top of the fact that she kind of blamed Taylor for surviving, because it's like, my husband didn't survive, you did, like, you should have died and not him. But, I guess it's just easier to blame her for that, too, just because she's there to be blamed. And, I mean, it turns out to be she didn't even have the quote-unquote affair. Like, he obviously was cheating, but it was with the lady we saw at the beginning that was crying. I was wondering what that's, like, was that supposed to mean? Like, when her heel broke and everything, I was like, oh, was that supposed to be connected to something that went wrong with the plane? I was like, no, she's the one that was having the affair with the pilot, so... And then on the flip side, kind of going back to her lawyer real quickly, I really like the fact that she fired him, because Bull kind of pointed out some stuff basic, because her lawyer was so adamant about her taking the deal. It's like, oh, this is what's best for you. But it's like, in a situation like that, should you be on your client's side to be like, yeah, not to take blame for this type of situation? Granted, he was a lawyer supplied by the airline. It's not her own lawyer, because it's like, lawyers cost a lot of money. So, but it's like, a normal lawyer would be like, no, you fight this, you prove your innocence. You, like, because she had her memory, like, was a little fuzzy, so it kind of swayed in his mind even more. Like, oh yeah, she's guilty, let's just settle this. But Bull pointed out the fact is, if she had settled, it basically would mean her admitting guilt, so she would never she'd become unemployable. Like, she would never fly again, because no one would hire her after taking blame for that. Even though, previously to that, she's had a spotless record. I mean, but in a grave situation like that, it's understandable why someone wouldn't have a job afterwards. It's like, after someone made a situation happen like that, it's kind of like, okay, then it's understandable why that person wouldn't get a job anymore. But for what you end up finding out is, like, this douchebag basically gets paid. Basically, the airline, when it comes to the settlement, they'll pay a certain amount to the families, but the lower the amount of money that's given to the families, the more her lawyer / his firm gets from it. So it's like, he wants her to settle for his own benefit, but he's like, no, this is the best choice for you. It's like, no, the best choice is to prove her innocence and prove that there was no fault of hers in this. And at the end of the day, that ended up being the case. Because what we ended up finding out is the fact that she didn't go about things in the right protocol, because there was a residential area near where, like, if she had gone through protocol, like, she would have landed on that residential area, and basically doing what she did gave her 5 more seconds of flight. So when the plane crashed, it crashed in a area that was unoccupied. So if she hadn't done that, there would have been a lot of people that died on the ground. Sadly, people died in the plane, but it was also like, the side of her brain, her military training being like, I have to make sure the people on the ground are safe too. It's like, we're screwed up here, but at the very least, I can minimize the casualties. That's kind of just how her brain works. So it wasn't any fault of her own. And also in this episode, we also got to see, is it Benny? Kind of step up a little bit in this episode, because we end up finding out that he used to be a prosecutor till he got fired. Didn't really get the conclusion to that story, because even Bull was like, because Taylor kind of looked a little worried when she found out he got fired, but it's kind of like, Bull was kind of like, I think he was saying, like, it's a funny story behind that, and we never got to hear that story. So I'm very interested to find that out. He was very nervous. I mean, really, he's very calm, cool, and collected. He handles things very well. I mean, he is the one that kind of runs the mock trials. I thought he was doing that just to pretend, but it's like, no, because he actually has a law background. Granted, he hasn't stepped foot into a court in like over a year. That was kind of the last time he was there. So this was its own thing, but more so than anything, when everything was said and done, not the entire jury was behind him. Because for one, obviously, I love the stipulations with some of the people. Like, one was a lady who had a problem with Taylor because she reminded her of the woman her husband left her for. So she kind of already had that bias against her. but there were still two that were kind of, holding the whole fact is that she was a woman kind of against her in a sense. And so Benny was kind of struggling to give his closing statement. And because for him, it's like your mock trials are one thing. You screw up, there's 100 more afterwards. But this one, it's like someone's life is in the balance. Like her being guilty or not guilty, it all comes down to this. So there's no second chances with this. He's got to get it right this time. Ended up having an interesting conversation with Chunk, who we also found out something about this episode, finding out that he was actually a football player back in the day. And he kind of talks to Benny about the fact is that basically there was a rumor going around. The fact is there was someone gay on his team. Now that next game after that whole rumor started spreading, he hit one of the other team's football players super hard, had him laid out for like a week. They lost their next game, but after that no one would have ever thought to think like, oh, Chunk, he's gay. And then he talked about the fact is until like their reunion like 10 years later. But nonetheless, like, you got to prove people wrong that, their mentality of thinking like, oh yeah, like, it's like, oh, it's impossible for a gay guy to hit that hard and play like, like a straight male type of situation. So it's like, oh yeah, female, it's impossible for her to be a hero. It's just being a hero is just kind of a male thing. So he ended up showing that picture, and everyone was like, oh yeah, obviously, we had this bully, and it's like, oh, which one of these kids stepped up to deal with the bully? And then most of them chose the boy with the blue t-shirt. I didn't. I obviously picked the girl with the red t-shirt. And I know it's simple to say that after the fact. But, I mean, mainly because it's like, for one, I knew the point he was trying to get across. But also, it's because I was like, yeah, because besides all that, you can tell by her stance. Like, the way she was positioned and the anger in her eyes is kind of like, yeah, obviously she was, well, initially, because it shows you how little I pay attention to details. I was like, oh yeah, she's wearing a pink t-shirt. Like the girl in the pink t-shirt, just like, oh, red t-shirt. I was like, oh wow, I have terrible eyes. I guess I wasn't really focusing too much on the color. I ended up noticing that in the background you do see like a kid with a pink t-shirt, so maybe my eye caught that or something. I don't know, because maybe I didn't look at it long enough, but I just, like I said, I knew the point they were getting across. But also you can tell she was the one that acted, because it's like, no duh, like, just like I said, because of her stance and the way, the expression on her face, it looked like she was ready to knock someone out. Which I'm not surprised. Like, I mean, I would never doubt a woman's strength. It's like, you can look at things from a biological sense, blah, 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 blah. It's like, there's plenty of women out there in the world that can kick I'm a big dude, but I'm sure there's plenty of women that can kick my ass. Like, to me, I'm not going to doubt a woman's strength. Like, women aren't frail creatures. They can kick ass and take care of their own. I'm not saying that just, for this purpose of the episode, which, I mean, it's kind of a message. Like, it's very interesting with stuff like that you can take away something from it. It's like, that's something to take away from it. Like, I'd say the quote of the show is like, I mean, this episode is, women can be heroes too, so don't count them out. Overall, a very good episode. I love the fact is that we are getting to learn about Bull's team a little bit more, kind of understanding who they are and what they do, the things that they do. Like, we still haven't got 100% of a picture of why a lot of the people are with him, but hopefully that'll be something we kind of get to see in the near future, get to learn a little bit more about Bull. Like I say, I know his ex-wife, Benny's sister, is going to come up in some storyline in some shape or form, and I'm very curious to see how that comes about. Just like, I'm very invested in the show, and I can't wait to see where next week's episode takes us. But that's really all I want to talk about in this episode. Till the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.